views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most inspired visionaries on the planet in lighthearted, lively dialogue. Join us as we explore the expansive nature of reality in a down-to-earth way, offering you insights and tools, empowering you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Now, here's your host, Christine Upchurch.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you're joining us here today, whether you're listening here on KKNW AM 1150 radio here in the Seattle area, on one of the 90 syndicated stations, either after the fact or perhaps concurrently, on Transformation Talk Radio around the world, or after the fact, including on ChristineUpchurch.com. But I tell you, wherever and whenever you're listening from, you're going to be glad you joined us, because I guarantee that the subject of today's topic will affect you, and it's something we can't escape. And what that is how our childhood has affected us and how we can grow up. But before we get into that, I want to say hello to my better half here in the studio, who does his magic so you can hear these wonderful conversations, Mr. Benny Mathers. Good morning, Benny.
Who doesn't want to touch base back on their childhood?
Well,
I think I had a pretty good one.
Well, you're one of the more fortunate people.
Oh.
I think a lot of people avoid it, run from it, suppress it, create a new story about it, but will do anything to actually avoid dealing with those wounds and to let in some of the light that came through childhood as well. Because
sometimes we need that.
We do.
Okay.
We definitely do.
Right.
And I think that in order to be an adult, we need to deal with our woundedness of our childhood, which is what our guest today talks a lot about in a wonderful new book. The person I'm talking about is Ira I. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's a professional clinical counselor. He has advanced degrees in psychology, philosophy, and religious studies. He's got some series out to help people, including a beginner's guide to happiness. Boy, I'd love to have that defined, happiness, and I'm sure I can ask him about that, and mindfulness for depression. And his workshops at Esalen are sold out, and he's got a wide international following. He is an author of a very new book that it's deep, it's impressive, and it's transformational. It is called How to Survive Your Childhood Now That You're an Adult, A Path to Authenticity and Awakening. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Ira I. Hi, Ira. Welcome.
Hi, Christine. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah. It's great to have you here. And I do love your book. And I'm sort of fascinated by, how people get from where they were once upon a time to what they're sharing and creating today. And before we get into the book and details, what led you to this point in your life?
Oh, well, my journey would seem somewhat non-discursive from the outside. It started back in 1985. There was a car accident, and it got me thinking about existential questions, what's the meaning of life, and things like that. Uh-huh. And for about 8 or 9 years, I ended up studying philosophy and then moving to Paris and studying literature and film and music. And then I got hurt in Thailand, and a woman healed me because there were no hospitals on the island of Koh Samui at that time in 1994. And it just, I don't know what the word is, it overturned my whole paradigm. Uh-huh. And I just thought all the stuff that I've been studying for the past 9 years, all the philosophy could be misguided or wrong. And so then I started studying Buddhism, Hinduism, Kabbalah, mindfulness, yoga. And then about 8 or 9 years later, I got into a dysfunctional relationship and I started studying psychology. So for about 25 years, if you looked at my life from the outside, you'd say, oh, he's a lost soul. What's he doing in Paris? What's he doing in Thailand? What's he doing in India? What's he doing studying these things? And then it all came together one day. And, I meant to be teaching the things that I'm teaching, and I frame them in terms of happiness because there's an epidemic of depression and a second epidemic of anxiety and stress in our culture.
Right.
So, I have tools to address all those things.
Yeah. And this concept of happiness, how do you define it?
Well, it's so interesting, because we live in this society where one of the inalienable rights is to be able to pursue happiness, and that actually is a surefire cause of misery. For pursuing happiness will always end up in misery for myriad reasons that I can talk about later. So for me, happiness, and I defer to Martin Seligman from my alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania, everybody has a range of happiness, and there are activities that will keep us at the high end of our range, yoga, meditation, sleeping, a loving relationship, eating correctly. And then there's tons of activities that will keep us at the low end of our happiness range. So for me, it's all about making commitments to practices and then, showing up every day with integrity.
Mm-hmm. I think that people often think of happiness as a state of always being happy. Like when you're talking about being happy in your life, that means that most moments of every day you're feeling happy. Is that how you define it?
Absolutely not. Happiness is a byproduct. That's why you can't aim for it. There's a quote by Mick Jones, and he says that happiness finds you. And again, so it's just like these are ephemeral states, and just like sadness is an ephemeral state. So when you're sad, you can say this too shall pass. And unfortunately, you don't want to say that when you're happy, because you don't want it to pass. And that's the problem of the human mind. It tries to cling to happiness as opposed to just being in the present moment and experiencing it.
Right.
So it's this. If you want me to jump into Buddhism, the second noble truth is that the root of all suffering is desire, which manifests as trying to cling to happiness and try to avert pain.
Right.
And, it's actually the clinging and the aversion that causes suffering. And so what I'm advocating as one part of authenticity is learning how to be present and not be, let the mind drag you into the past, which is gone, or drag you into a non-existent, not yet existent future.
And it seems to me that we spend so much of our energy resisting what is. It might be the present moment, it might be the present circumstances, that it doesn't allow us to process and change. So how do we get beyond that resistance?
Acceptance, radical acceptance. There's a quote by Eckhart Tolle says, "You either accept your life or change it. Any other position is insane." So it's a really interesting because our mind is built to create these grievance stories about, these woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't. Oh, I'd be happier now if I had won the lottery, if I had gone to this college, if I hadn't married this person, if I had married this person. And that's the problem, because that's not reality. These are all hypothetical suppositions that your mind is doing. And, I make a joke and I say, if you walked home tonight and saw one of your loved ones, your child or your partner, sitting on the couch trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, you would go over and stop them. And yet this is what your mind does all day long. It's trying to change things that it can't change.
Why do we get into that mode?
Well, because this is my belief. As sentient beings, what we really want is to be loved unconditionally. And we grew up in this very competitive society, which only gave us tools to gain love conditionally, because we're wealthy, we speak well, we're sexy, we travel to exotic places. And it ends up cultivating unintentionally resentment, because we're basically seducing people into liking these false selves that we created to try to get our emotional, psychological needs met as children. And, as I said, the only panacea is to shed these defense mechanisms, these facades, our fears, our prejudices that we developed as children, and then learn how to show up in the present moment as loving, vulnerable adults.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that vulnerability is not something that we typically feel comfortable with, particularly in Western culture.
No.
Yeah, so it's challenging. I mean, you've said it in a very eloquent way, and yet it has its challenges.
Yeah, well, there's no there. I don't believe that there's a permanent state of enlightenment. I don't think I even use that word in my book. I use the word awakening. And, I'm just here to help raise consciousness and, get people to analyze all the things that we consider to be normal, whether it's asphalt or root canals or, the way we practice medicine or relationships. At some point in time will be considered totally absurd. Right. I mean, I make the joke, I say, if you tried to explain to my grandmother in the 1970s that someday there will be transgender bathrooms, that a black man will be president, that gay people could marry, and that marijuana would be legal, she would have laughed you out of the room, right? This is 45 years ago. Yeah. And when in 45 years, when people look back on us and fossil fuels and marriage for life and all the things that we consider to be normal, they're going to think that we're, like cavemen.
Yes, indeed. I'm fascinated by your discussion in your book about authenticity and how we can break through that facade that we've developed in childhood. So when we return, Ira, I'm going to want you to talk a lot more about how we can find our way to authenticity. How do we define it? And I love how you describe this in your book. It's the most unusual kind of treatise of authenticity I've ever read. But we have to go to a quick break. More with Ira Israel here in just a few moments.
You made plans and I made problems. We were sleeping back to back. We know this day wasn't built to last. Yeah, good on paper.
Chances are you've been on your conscious journey for many years, and you've learned a lot about manifesting a wonderful life. But if you are like many others on their spiritual paths, you may still have some area of your life where you're feeling stuck. Perhaps you've read many books, attended lots of workshops, listened to many programs, and done plenty of inner work, and yet there is still something you'd like to change. With all the information out there, it may be hard to see the forest for the trees. Do you want to get a bird's eye view of that forest so you are empowered to navigate more effectively? Do you want to know the key to positive change and develop a personalized strategy for creating the changes you desire? Please join me, Christine Upchurch, for a 4-week webinar series beginning January 9th. Start your new year right and embrace the vibration of change. For more information, visit ChristineUpchurch.com. That's ChristineUpchurch.com or call 425-999-9836.
Calling all moms, it's time to awaken your vibrant, intuitive, loving self in every area of your life. Join host Debbie Pokornik as she shares thoughts, stories, and tools to help you stand in your power. Listen to Vibrant, Powerful Moms helping everyday women create extraordinary lives. Mondays at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. For more information about Debbie, visit empoweringenergy.com. That's empowering with letters NRG.com.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. What does the word healing mean? Many think that healing merely means eliminating symptoms. However, based on my many years as a healer, I have a much broader perspective on the word. Healing can manifest in a variety of ways, including having physical problems resolved, becoming more emotionally centered, experiencing better relationships, gaining greater clarity, and feeling more spiritually connected. True healing always includes some level of transformation. Whatever form healing takes, there is one commonality, an improvement in quality of life. To me, the highest form of healing goes beyond aligning with wellness. It comes from recognizing our soul's voice and allowing it to speak through us. And in that sense, don't we all yearn to heal into our wholeness? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Hi there, this is Audrey Michelle, host of Rewired Life Radio. If you've listened to the show, you know I talk a lot about listening to your body. Here's the deal. Listening to your body takes quieting your mind, and I want to teach you how. Actually, we're going to start right now. Take a deep breath, a truly deep breath, all the way to the top of your inhale, and then exhaling to the very bottom of your belly. Breathing, feeding your body the oxygen and fuel it needs. This is the first step in listening to your body. There's more, but it's so easy. I want to share a quick meditation with you to help you instantly reconnect with yourself and listen to your body. Simply go to audreymichelle.com/tips and download it for free today. That's Audrey Michelle, spelled MICHEL.com/tips.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. You know, Ira, before the break, you were talking about how we as children create a facade. First of all, why is it that we create this facade?
Well, babies want to sleep when they're tired, eat when they're hungry, poop when they have to poop, and play when they're playful. And what we do very quickly is try to put them onto schedules, we spend 18 years trying to make them productive members of society. Our entire school system is 250, 300 years old. It's built to make factory workers.
Right.
So we're going to have to make radical changes in the way we raise children because as I said, we have these epidemics of depression and anxiety because we're putting pressure on them to study a bunch of things that are not useful and they develop resentment, and so we really have to look at the whole way that we raise children from breastfeeding, we're the only animal that drinks the milk of another mammal.
Right.
So but that interferes with women working in the workforce.
Right.
So,
I took a different approach with my kids. I did what was considered to be really radical at the time, attachment parenting, the co-sleeping, the nursing on demand until either the child-led weaning and all that. And yet there's such judgment about that kind of parent-child relationship, which blows my mind. I don't really understand it.
Well, it's fascinating to me. So when I was going for my degree in psychology, I really started to look at the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And I started to look from the outside. There's a quote that I love. It's, I don't know who discovered water, but I doubt it was a fish. So I started to look at the DSM and because I was trying to look for the barometer of mental wellness, because it's not really given, except inversely. And and this might be offensive to some of your listeners, but the barometer for mental wellness is, can you show up for your job? And we really put a large emphasis on being able to work. And, I make a joke in the book and I say, if you called up a friend and said, how are you? And she said, well, I just spent the last 2 weeks in bed eating literature and watching reality TV, you would think she's ill. There's something wrong with her. Right. And because she didn't work. And really, there's all this pressure on us to be productive. But I mean, and this I can go totally into left field with this one, but that's a way that we're controlled by, getting, as I say in the book, the average person mortgage in America is $220,000. It's, they're 30 years, and basically it's, buying a house, which is now the American dream, or a car, or, you go to college, that's the average kid comes out with $26,000. The average person has $4,000 in credit card debt, and you get on this hamster wheel and you have that monthly nut to make, and you start to hate your job, and then you're just working to make that monthly nut. And of course you're going to be depressed. Of course you're going to think, your life isn't meaningful. And, maybe if you weren't sold that craziness that you'll be happy if you buy a house, no, that's not the root of happiness. That's, again, a way that our society maintains order by selling that dream.
I think that young people today are starting to view it a little bit differently. I've got a son who's going to be graduating from college next year, another son who's going to be graduating from high school. And first of all, both of them are dismayed with the state of our world or the state of our country. And they don't feel the hope that I felt when I was at that age and stage. And I know that there are a lot of kids who are getting out of four-year college or even having graduate degrees who can't even work in the field that they've studied in.
Right.
So it's creating, I think, additional depression. They're feeling oppressed in a weird sort of way. It's kind of like we have constructed this society that isn't going to work for them in the same kind of way that it at least seemed to work for us, or at least we bought into the fact that it was working for us. And I see that in school, it's like, particularly high school, they give so much work that the kids can't even just take time to breathe or create or play guitar. It's very, very odd.
But the one thing I'll say in favor of millennials is there is a lot of downsizing. So, I look at, people at the end of their lives and what they say and, the way they look at their lives. And, I make a joke and I say, nobody on their deathbed ever said, I could have spent more time in the office.
Mm-hmm, right.
They always say, I should have loved more.
Right.
So, millennials today also know that experiences trump possession.
Yeah.
On your deathbed, you will remember walking through the streets of Paris. You will not remember the handbag that you had.
Yep.
So, we really need to emphasize that the only thing that correlates strongly with happiness in all longitudinal studies is the quality of your intimate relationships. So we have to teach children how to have intimate relationships. There's a thing in schools, social and emotional learning, and, that's what we really need. They don't really need chemistry and biology and math. They really need, like how do you connect with another human being?
And yet we're in this age of technology where they're connecting via text and social media instead of looking at somebody face-to-face, eye-to-eye, voice-to-voice.
Well, in the book, I say mirror neurons do not fire via text message.
What does that mean?
I'm arguing that we're deluded into thinking that we're connecting through all this, new technology. And what we really need is face-to-face contact. And we need to have people who don't invalidate our emotional experience. And I phrase that very particularly because when you're going into Whole Foods and the cashier is like checking their text messages or they're doing something else and they don't make eye contact with you and they don't say, hi, how are you? How are you doing today? They don't interact with you as a human being. You're just like you're moving a wallet. And I'm not just making fun of Whole Foods, but just like my interactions with a lot of people in this capitalistic system are not that humane. People don't say, hello, how are you? They're just they want your money and then they want you out of their restaurant or out of the store as quickly as possible. So for me, what we really need to do is we can't rely on Facebook likes or Snapchat or Instagram likes in order to get our self-esteem. We really need to sit with other human beings and have them, make eye contact with us and mirror our affect, the way we're sitting, the way we're looking, so that we don't think that the thoughts going through our head and all that alienation and, the thoughts that are very depressing about our world and our society don't make us feel like we're crazy.
And part of that equation requires that we are, how do I put this? That we're willing to accept the way things are, accept ourselves and accept others. And that's a big leap.
Well, I think for me, and the last chapter is how to surf the paradoxes of life. So yes, politics is absurd and theatrical, and that doesn't excuse you from participating fully. You can know that all these things are heinous and disgusting, but that doesn't mean you should stay in bed on election day. We really have to partake in the system, even though we know. I mean, I make a joke in my classes. I say, raise your hand if you live in a democracy, and I say, and I ask them, what's it like? Because I live. No. And then I say, I'll know I live in a democracy when we vote by our telephone. Because we have the technology to do that. The chat system is 250 years old. It's totally antiquated. It's just as susceptible to, hacking as the phones are. So there's no reason. I mean, we need to eliminate, obviously, the Democrats and Republicans and all the lobbyists and we have to live in a true democracy, meaning everybody votes by their telephones. It's super simple. Like, I don't know why, the government doesn't put a commission together from Apple and Google and IBM and Microsoft executives and don't figure out a way to reinvent the voting system and just eliminate the two-party Democrats and Republicans. It's really...
There's a simple answer to that, I think. It has to do with where the money is.
Right.
And so it's the financial structure that I think gets in the way of the democracy. Yeah.
Well, the people, that's why I look at the culture the culture war that we're in right now as between conservatives, which are primarily white male Judeo-Christian, if you look at all those people, and then progressives. It's not between Republicans and Democrats. It's between conservatives, and so the conservatives are in power, and they're really like everybody, they fear the unknown, and they're enjoying their power and to pay less taxes and to work, the way they want to work, and to have the system, be favorable towards them in terms of taxes and things like that. So they're trying to conserve that old, America, the great America with slavery and all those wonderful things that we had. Right. And then we have the progressives who are trying to move forward, who are trying to be all-encompassing, who are trying to say, what does it matter if gay people want to marry? What do we care? Or so it's between conservatives trying to go backwards and progressives trying to go forward.
Right. And one of the things I find so interesting is my father was a conservative, and he passed away a number of years ago. But I remember one of the main reasons he was conservative was because he believed in being fiscally conservative. And what we're seeing these days, we've seen here in the U.S. in the past couple of days, that hasn't been the case for conservatives. It really is about preserving the status quo and the structure. It's not being financially responsible to, our country, our children, our grandchildren.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, for conservatives, it's more, and I thought there was something called separation of church and state in this country. But really, it comes down to abortion. I mean, the conservative issues come down to a few things that really government should not be involved with. But, we're all fiscally conservative. And I lambasted David Brooks because, he wrote down that Democrats are in favor of big government, which is insane because I've done that for 32 years, and never have I stood up never have I gone to a meeting or anything and heard anyone say more government. Right. We're all in favor of efficient government, everybody, universally. So you're taking the conversation down 3 levels by saying something that Democrats are in favor of big government. No one's in favor of big government. That's totally absurd. We want an efficient government. We want to all live harmoniously, and we want to have equal opportunities. And that's not the case in America. Michelle Alexander wrote that incredible book, The New Jim Crow Laws, 2 years ago. And she goes through it and she says, if you live in this zip code, you have a 75% chance, if you're a young African-American man, of spending most of your life in jail. And that's by zip code. Right. So, we don't live in a country of equal opportunity, and we need to, establish some new regulations and to work towards that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a fascinating conversation, and we have to go to another quick break, but stay tuned for more with Ira Israel. I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. As a former research statistician, my scientific background is what many would call sensible. For more than a decade now, I have been working in the field of energy medicine, facilitating sessions and teaching around the world. People from the mainstream often ask me, how did a sensible woman like you end up working in such an alternative field? Implicit in their question is the underlying assumption that the field of subtle energy, such as energy healing and intuition, isn't sensible. But I believe it is very sensible. Even scientists are able to measure aspects of this. Approaching life from an energetic perspective brings us new opportunity for healing and transformation. And from a practical standpoint, even if you can't rationally explain how something works, if you experience a shift from it, then doesn't it make it pretty sensible? Please visit StellarReflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836. Chances are you've been on your conscious journey for many years, and you've learned a lot about manifesting a wonderful life. But if you are like many others on their spiritual paths, you may still have some area of your life where you're feeling stuck. Perhaps you've read many books, attended lots of workshops, listened to many programs, and done plenty of inner work, and yet there is still something you'd like to change. With all the information out there, it may be hard to see the forest for the trees. Do you want to get a bird's eye view of that forest so you are empowered to navigate more effectively? Do you want to know the key to positive change and develop a personalized strategy for creating the changes you desire? Please join me, Christine Upchurch, for a 4-week webinar series beginning January 9th. Start your new year right and embrace the vibration of change. For more information, visit ChristineUpchurch.com. That's ChristineUpchurch.com or call 425-999-9836. Have you been seeing numbers like 111 and 222 everywhere you go? Do you feel that the universe may be trying to get your attention, perhaps offering a message of some sort? As it turns out, numerical patterns and certain types of geometry form the very fabric of our reality, from cells under a microscope to the astronomy of our night sky. At Stellar Reflections, we offer special sessions which tap into these patterns, designed specifically to support you on your journey. The 111 and 222 activations are sessions activating new patterns in your energy field, which in turn can help you create new patterns in your life. After just one session with a practitioner, either in person or via distance, clients report gaining greater clarity, becoming more intuitive, and honoring their inner truth as they move forward in their lives. Curious about what these transformational sessions might do for you? Call 425-999-9836 or visit StellarReflections.com. That's StellarReflections.com.
No matter where you are.
Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. That is the wonderful Michael Tomlinson, who, by the way, has a new Christmas album out. And
what?
He does, yes.
Didn't send it on
you
to
can
me?
You can download it. You can order a CD, and he's a wonderful musician, a sweet, sweet man, very deep. And I know a lot of people follow him on Facebook and read what he writes just about every day because he's either doing something humorous or actually becoming very introspective about something. And he's been a guest on this show.
Yeah, and you can actually hear that show or tune in at 1150kknw.com. We have the podcast there listed, so you may hit it up.
Yeah, and on ChristineUpchurch.com as
That too.
well.
Yep.
Yes.
So many places.
I know, exactly. And the podcast these days, it's kind of like, I don't even know how it works. I just sort of close my eyes and say, okay, whatever. Alrighty, we are talking to Ira Israel, and he's written a wonderful book called How to Survive Your Childhood Now That You're an Adult, A Path to Authenticity and Awakening. Now, I know before the break, Ira, you and I were talking about how we are awakening in this society to some dysfunction, and we're talking about, the hopes of transformation. Now, you talk a lot in your book about authenticity, and I'm very fascinated by what you say. I know it's been a buzzword. I know that there have been a lot of people who focused on this and continue to focus on this, but I've always been a little bit confused. Who am I really? It's like I think I know my authentic self, right? And then something happens, or I let go of certain things, and I'm wondering, okay, well, I'm not that anymore, and I'm not connected to this, and I'm changing some of my desires. Who am I anyway? It's like it's one of these questions that keeps coming up for me. How do we actually excavate our way to our authentic selves?
So there's a beautiful quote by Jacques Lacan. He says, "Language thinks me." So the book starts off, obviously, as you read, and I asked, what's the relationship between thinking and language? Could you think outside of the English language? And if that's the only language does that limit your thoughts in some way? So the other, philosophical quote is, language is a cage, right? So on one level, there's a way of explicating the concept of Brahman in Hinduism, I was told once the best translation was that without attributes. The way I explicate it in my classes is if you can think it, it's not it. Meaning, like everything, it's so there's a whole reality out there, but we're limited by our five senses, and then the way our mind chunks things together.
Okay, so go back to that statement. I really want you to focus on that again. If you can think it, then what was the statement again?
If you can think it, it's not it. Meaning it's Brahman, which is the I don't know the best way. You have to. The Upanishads are all about indicating Brahman through like little poems and little stories. I mean, you can think of it as the Matrix, from the film The Matrix, something like that. Like we're all interconnected. There's this total oneness, and yet as human beings, our minds tell us that we're individual, we're separate, we're not really connected. The whole world is made up of individual atoms, blah, 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 blah. So again, to go to the end of the book, there's a paradox because you have to decide what reality is like. I mean, there are people who are born again atheists like Gore Vidal. So, are they willing to accept mystery in terms of what like you or I might think of as the divine or Brahman or something like that? So for me, that's a key component of authenticity, having an understanding of, and this is explicated in the book as by the term dharma. How is the universe operating? Is everything just happening at random, or is there some kind of underlying confluence of events? Or the best way I was taught to think about this is in terms of probability waves, in terms of quantum physics.
Right. Yeah.
That there's so many factors going into all the things that decide whether whatever's going to happen to you or I in Los Angeles or Seattle this afternoon. There's billions of factors going on, and we don't know them, so that we can't exactly know the future. But I can tell you if I stay in my home, there's a lot less possibility that I'm going to be, I don't know what. So again, we have to have an understanding in terms of showing up authentically. One of the things that we're responsible for is having just understanding that understanding our paradigm, and that language is, one level of things that is influencing our whole experience of reality. And then on top of that, if we want to discuss authenticity, for me, I break it down to attachment, atonement, attunement, presence, and congruence. So attachment is knowing your attachment style. Basically, as you were talking about attachment parenting, that's a very small percentage of people in America.
Right.
But the individuation process, from the time you're 6 months old till 18 months old, when you hold a baby up to a mirror, its eyes dart around like a blind person because it doesn't have a self. It can't imagine itself apart from the mother because it knows instinctually it'll die. It's dependent, right? So in that process, our individuation process in America is extremely abrupt. There's one theorist, Yalom, who died about 6 weeks ago, who says that, I'm so sorry, it's Janov, down here, not Yalom. He was on Abbot Kinney Boulevard down here, and John Lennon went to his place. It's called the Primal Therapy. And he says that the first time you put a baby down and say, we're going to sleep in our room, you sleep in the crib, we'll be back in 8 hours, whatever, the baby thinks, you're killing me.
Right.
And that is the primal or core abandonment wound, and it manifests as a betrayal. Because the baby thinks that like you're going to take care of it and make the world wonderful and loving and happy and make the baby clean and blah blah blah. Right. And all of a sudden you're not there, and the baby thinks I'm on the verge of death.
If you think of where we've evolved from, it's kind of like putting your baby into another cave.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense, and it would be a survival kind of thing.
Exactly. And so that manifests later in life in terms of, people get fired or their spouses leave them. And so they're not really experiencing what's going on in the present moment. It's actually a reopening of that primal core betrayal or abandonment wound. So that's something that's fascinating to me. And I do think that we need to be aware of just our basic understanding. Is the universe a secure and abundant place, or do we have to hoard? Are we scarcity driven? If we turn our back, someone's going to hurt us. So knowing our basic understanding of the world is encompassed in our knowing our attachment dynamics. Uh-huh. And then the second part is atonement or at-one-ment, which breaks down into being able to release the resentment that your mind creates about things that you can't change. Those woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't. Like, right. Oh, I'd be happy now if I were taller or richer, or my wife was this person or that person. All those things that aren't reality. So the way we clean up our past, and that's why I use the word at-one-ment or atonement, is through forgiveness. And Lily Tomlin says it best when she says, "Forgiveness means giving up all hope of having a better past."
I love that.
Right? Forgiveness means giving up all hope of having a better past. You have to just accept everything that made you today, period. Uh-huh. I sat with Rick Hansen at Spirit Rock, and he said, you can't pull all of the weeds in the garden, but you can plant flowers. So we have to know that our mind was built to create these weeds, these resentments, these woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't. Uh-huh. We can't go in and pick them out individually, but we can replace them with flowers of gratitude by, just understanding that there's 3.5 billion other human beings that are living on less than $1.90 a day. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of human beings who walk the face of the earth never reach the age of 40 years old. Like, we're living among the most privileged society in the most ideal conditions hitherto, and yet 23 million Americans take antidepressants every day, and most other people are stressed out of their gourds. Mm-hmm. So being able to clean up those resentments, prejudices, expectations, and fears of the past by accepting them and forgiving everyone else, that's the atonement. Mm-hmm. The third part of authenticity is attunement, and this is what you and I were discussing before regarding people deluding themselves into thinking that they're connecting with other human beings through technology. We need to be able to really sit with other people, to be with other people, because as I said, the one thing that correlates most strongly with happiness is our ability to securely attach, and the key to that, the key to intimate relationships, is attunement, meaning that my disposition, my breathing, if I'm crying, then you're crying, or if you're happy, then I'm happy. Because, as I said, mirror neurons mean that, like, I'm being your mirror and validating your emotional experience. Right. I think that's the best way to explain it. So we need that because, left to our own devices, if we're just like listening to the hamster wheels in our heads, anybody would think that they're nuts. It's just like because we get all that information. Okay.
So we're going to hold off on the fourth part of authenticity because we have to go to another quick break, but stay tuned. Chances are you've been on your conscious journey for many years, and you've learned a lot about manifesting a wonderful life. But if you are like many others on their spiritual paths, you may still have some area of your life where you're feeling stuck. Perhaps you've read many books, attended lots of workshops, listened to many programs, and done plenty of inner work, and yet there is still something you'd like to change. With all the information out there, it may be hard to see the forest for the trees. Do you want to get a bird's eye view of that forest so you are empowered to navigate more effectively? Do you want to know the key to positive change and develop a personalized strategy for creating the changes you desire? Please join me, Christine Upchurch, for a 4-week webinar series beginning January 9th. Start your new year right and embrace the vibration of change. For more information, visit ChristineUpchurch.com. That's ChristineUpchurch.com or call 425-999-9836.
Interested in deepening your spiritual practice? The School for Esoteric Studies offers online training to spiritual seekers from all paths of life and individual coaching. Our courses synthesize Eastern and Western spiritual traditions based on meditation, study, and service applied to everyday life. To learn more about our courses and services, please visit www.esotericstudies.net.
The Knowledge Book, currently studied in 39 countries and 15 languages around the world, accelerates our evolution, takes us out of depression, offers universal truth, protects us, and makes us stronger, both spiritually and physically. So if you are interested in the Knowledge Book, visit usa.theknowledgebook.net and tune in to the Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Potasic on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
I'm Peggy Snow with another Stellar Reflections Minute. Presence, or what we think of as being fully in the moment, is a key element in the process of healing work. As a practitioner facilitating a session, genuine presence takes us out of our heads, where we tend to decide what is and maybe what should be for the client, and moves us into direct experience, where we're available to witness the person in their wholeness. In this receptive realm, our senses are heightened and expanded, allowing us to perceive what's seeking to unfold and to interact in the moment. There's something profoundly powerful that happens when healing is approached in this simple, pure way. Balance can be restored and healing can take place on multiple levels. If you'd like more information about the services we offer at Stellar Reflections, visit us at stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836.
Welcome back. We are having a fascinating conversation today about surviving our childhood and becoming a real adult. And Ira, before the break, you talked about three of the parts of authenticity: attachment, atonement, and attunement. What are the rest of the aspects of authenticity?
So the other two are presence and then congruence. Presence is being able to disallow your mind from dragging you into the non-existent past or the not yet existing future. And for me, the tools of yoga and meditation are the most efficient, but, we all have to find whatever puts us in that zone of being particularly present and focused in the present moment. Right. And on one of my DVDs, I say, depression relates to thoughts about the past. Anxiety relates to thoughts about the future. Mm-hmm. The past no longer exists, and the future doesn't yet exist. So how can depression and anxiety exist? And again, it's just about raising consciousness because, we live in this paradigm of cognitive behavioral therapy where thoughts precede our emotions. And, if we can master or learn how to tame those wild horses that are the thoughts that are dragging us around, that we can keep ourselves at a higher end of our happiness ranges. So being able to be present, Ram Dass calls it the be here now. Mm-hmm. It sounds so simple, but, as I said, your mind is built to, drag us into the past and create expectations about the future. That's what it does to try to keep us safe.
Right. And of course, being present isn't just about, taming the thoughts that create the depression about the past or the anxiety about the future. It's also about allowing whatever emotion is there, because it seems like oftentimes people will suppress and avoid what they're feeling in the current moment.
And in particular, and this is a whole other show we can do on grief and men's inability to grieve and to really express the continual sadness of losing things. So that to me is the root cause of some of the problems that are manifesting as mental disorders in our country is the inability to properly find rituals to grieve. And so you're exactly right in bringing that up. And then the fifth part of authenticity is congruence. And that's deciding who you want to be and what type of life you want to live. And you have to understand that's an incredible privilege to have the time, to have the space to decide who you want to be rather than running from lions and tigers or having bombs. You know, people who are excessively poor, you know, don't have the luxury of deciding, do I want to go to Air One for lunch or do I want to go to Whole Foods for lunch? I mean, so, you know, like the things that we consider to be normal for most of the world, you know, as we were talking between the break, our iPhones. You know, that's an incredible luxury to be walking around with $1,000 computer in your pocket at all times. That's insane, you know. So congruence is deciding who you want to be and then, you know, having the tools to be that person. And this is the evidence for this I give in the preface of the book, or the epitaph at the beginning, which is Andre Gide once wrote, "It is better to be hated for who you are than to be loved for who you are not."
Yeah, I love that quote. Love that quote.
And so, you know, we have this false self that we created to survive our childhoods and try to get our emotional and psychological needs met as children. And we can be happy about that because we know it works, because we're alive today. And yet, whatever tools we develop as 7, 8, 10-year-olds are probably hindering us from showing up authentically and being vulnerable in our relationships today.
Yeah. And it seems to me that if we really desire to create change in our own lives, positive change in the world, that it has to be born of who we truly are.
Total. Well, you know, we are the ones we have been waiting for, Alice Walker says. And then the other quote is by Gandhi. We have to be the change we want to see in the world. So, yeah, we're like, this is it. It's up to us. We have to, you know, show up every day, no matter how, you know, absurd most of the things that we have to deal with. And, you know, I read several papers every morning, and I'm aghast. I'm like, really? Like, really? This is the state of our political system. This is the state of banking. I mean, I woke up this morning. I know nothing about, you know, stocks and business and like that, but I saw that Bitcoin, and I have a lot of patients in the office who, you know, do investment banking and do a lot of things like that. And all these like systems of betting that people like Bitcoin, and it went down 25%. And so, you know, I mean, I don't know what that means, but I know that if you invested, you know, $4 million, you would have lost $1 million overnight. You know, just so it's super interesting to have to, you know, interact with all these people, and that's why I do read the papers and look at these things and say like, wow, that's just organized betting. You know, I don't understand how you can call that like the stock market or business or things like that. You know.
We've just got a couple minutes left here, about a minute and a half. I want to make sure that you can share with our listeners how they can get in touch with you and about your upcoming event.
Sure. IraIsrael.com is a portal. There's free lectures and classes on there, and there's you can get my 5 DVDs. They're all free on Amazon Prime: A Beginner's Guide to Happiness, Mindfulness for Depression, Mindfulness for Anxiety. And I will be teaching at the Esalen Institute February 23rd through 25th, and then I'll be doing a week in the fall. And if you're in the Los Angeles area, I'll be at Black Dog Yoga sometime in January. And, you know, feel free to contact me through my website.
So tell us a little bit about your upcoming event at Esalen in February.
It's so wonderful because I get to, you know, a couple of times a year I get to teach yoga classes, and that's a very spiritual experience for me. I kind of go into a zone, and I make it all. I stand in front of a large group of people, and I say, I am not a yoga teacher. I am a conductor, and I am conducting a symphony of the breath for the next 60 minutes. And then I just do this whole thing where we're all breathing the Ujjayi breath for 60 minutes together, and you hear it, and it's like an ocean. And super powerful. And then we're adding on, obviously, the asanas to the inhalations and the exhalations. So, being a conductor of the breath for those 60 minutes. And I teach classes on attachment theory, how your mind was built, what your mind was designed to do. I have all these mentalisms and all these magic tricks and things that show people that their understanding of reality is very subjective, and that we really need great tools like language, to be able to communicate efficiently and create a reality that we want to partake in. Yeah. So, the courses are amazingly transformational. And, I'll start it with a joke, and I'll say, I have 4 graduate degrees, and, all the information in my head and a token can get me on the subway. Nobody needs information. Well, what we need is transformation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Ira. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Christine. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us here today. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
You've been listening to The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey. Each week, this show engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information about the transformative healing work of Christine, visit www.stellarreflections.com. And for weekly topics, visit www.transformationtalkradio.com.